great-granddaddy of street photography himself, Mr. Cartier-Bresson, once said, "Sharpness is a bourgeois concept." And at the time, I think he was joking, but I also think that he was a lot more correct than even he thought. Let me explain. Now, I'm serious when I say it doesn't need to be in focus, but that's not really the whole story. To help us get to the point here, we have to start with this. Here's a photo we can all agree is good. McCurry's Afghan Girl is such a famous and recognizable portrait that even people who aren't interested in photography at all recognize it. And yes, it does bear some resemblance to Girl with the Pearl Earring, but that's a whole different video altogether. Here's the thing about Afghan Girl. This photo was shot in 1984 on Kodachrome slide film by a career photojournalist who got paid to travel and take photos like this. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that on the face level, right? But even McCurry couldn't make this photo again today because Kodachrome's no longer around. And that's the first part of the problem. This National Geographic kind of style with long lenses and full frame slide film, it's not just that it's completely inaccessible to most people, it's not relatable. Let me be clear about a couple of things. I love this photo and I love this like 80s Nat Geo aesthetic, but I also mean what I say when I say that the Nikon 105, 2.5 and slide film are inaccessible to most people. These days, that photo just doesn't look like anything that we can do with our phones, and so it maybe isn't as inspiring or relatable as it used to be. Here's the thing, and I promise all of this is going to tie up nicely and make sense. When old mate Steve took this photo originally, most people who we called photographers were professionals. They had cameras we didn't have access to, they had film that we didn't have access to, and much more of it, and they got to travel to places that we didn't either. They spent years learning about film and darkroom printing and the inverse square law and composition. In 1985, when this photo was published on the cover of National Geographic, my dad had a little Kodak 110 camera and he shot whatever film was the cheapest at the petrol station. Bringing us into the present now in the year 2024, I think that what it means to be a photographer has changed. I am a photographer, yes, I have a big chunky DSLR with a vertical grip and a bad haircut, and I know what Rodinol is, and I know that it tastes better than HC110, so I must be a photographer, right? But I think that taking photos and making great images is no longer just a skill for job photographers. I think it's a life skill that everybody needs now in the digital era, like cooking or driving. And bringing us back to our dear friend Henri Cartier-Bresson, if you think that for a photo to be valid, it has to be sharp and perfectly composed and in focus, that's a bourgeois viewpoint. I think that the view that the younger generation and Gen Z have of the bumbling old man with the Nikon is overwhelmingly negative. And I think that that might be, from their perspective, for good reason. Who gets to decide what images are valid? It's not him. Okay, hold on. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a bad photo. Of course there is. I've taken thousands of them. I'm an expert. But what I am saying is photos taken on phones without any thought going into the composition and no golden ratio aren't automatically bad. When the Impressionists started painting, they were shunned by the realists for their lack of painting skills. I think they were good painters. So what's the point here? What do we do about all of this? I'm sure you've seen deliberately de-proed aesthetics on social media lately. There's literally a plugin called De-Hancer. And sure, the girl in the bikini out of focus in the foreground is a bit of a trope and it can be used as a compositional crutch, but I think that aesthetic being trendy shows us what's really going on under the hood. Here's another photo. What do you think? I shot this in 2021, and initially when I saw the contact sheet, I was disappointed because I missed focus. But despite that, I still kind of liked this photo. And until I revisited it for this video, I hadn't really figured out why. And sure, I could come up with some artist vomit about how the old man being out of focus depicts visually the rapidly modernizing world around him, forgetting him, but like that's kind of cheating. I think the reason that it still works is because even though he's out of focus, the photo is still somewhat aesthetically pleasing and it still shows you the story that I wanted to show you. I promise I do have a solution for all of this, but first we need to make a quick detour to Jürgen Teller. Jürgen Teller is what happens when we take this idea of not composing to its logical extremes. and he's one of my biggest portraiture inspirations. What you'll notice about his photography is that it doesn't look anything like anything else you would usually see in Elle or Vogue. At first glance, it looks amateur. And a lot of people think it's bad, and a lot of professional photographers get really angry on Twitter whenever he releases a new set. But I think he's a genius. Teller, when he shoots like this, is subverting your expectations for how celebrities should be portrayed. He's showing them to us the same way we see each other. So not only are we seeing the celebrity in a much more relatable way, bringing them down to our level of a regular human being, it's funny because on the one hand he is bringing them down to our level, but on the other hand, they're still a famous movie star. It's taking the mystique out of celebrity, but reminding us that it could be us on the cover, but it's not. Okay, Smarty Pants, it's time for a solution. I get it, I hear you. What do we actually do about all of this? Well, I think it's important for us photo nerds to remember that to non-photographers, having that tack sharp 36 megapixel bokeh balls in the background look is the look of the photographic bourgeoisie. The middle-aged men who have made their careers from image making, but look down upon the photographic proletariat, which is the average Jane or Joe with an iPhone. I detest gatekeeping, and I think it's the responsibility of stuffy bearded dudes with DSLRs like me not to teach the iPhone user how to make their pictures look like mine, but to teach them how to make the pictures look the way they want them to. Because honestly, I really, truly, deeply believe that everyone is a photographer. Everyone takes photos every single day. It doesn't matter if it's just your dog or the sunset and just because you're not making photography your career or not using the latest Sony Alpha Giga Chad pixel maxing camera doesn't make your photos any less valid than mine, or Teller's, or Cartier-Bresson's, or Steve McCurry's. Gordon Ramsay can cook way better than my mum can. But no Wagyu steak that Gordon Ramsay would ever make me would be more impactful or important to me personally as my mum's casserole. It's not up to anybody else to tell you what's good or bad. It's up to you to fill up your brain with inspiration from all over the place and develop a taste, take the photos that you want to take, decide whether you like them or not, and then if you do, post them on Instagram and loudly proclaim to everybody that you think it's good, even if they're not in focus. Stay hydrated and create art.